You may have noticed there's no stoppage time this week, and that's because we collectively felt there's nothing we could talk about that was more important than what happened on Friday. So I'd like to briefly open up the conversation with a true story. I've never shared this publicly, but it's been weighing heavy on my heart. I'm gonna try and get through it without crying.
You got it.
I once had an ectopic pregnancy. So this is when the fetus grows outside of the uterus, usually in the fallopian tube, because the embryo never makes it down to the uterus. Ectopic pregnancies are dangerous because if undetected and the fetus gets too big, it can rupture the tube, which leaves you at risk for life-threatening bleeding. Ectopic pregnancies can be fatal. I had multiple procedures to expel the cells and tissue from my body, procedures that essentially saved my life. The same procedures that, as of a few days ago, are now considered illegal in many states. I'm so fortunate I live in a state where resources were made available to me, no questions asked, and I cannot fathom experiencing what was already a very traumatic event with no options. The Supreme Court's overturning of Roe has been extremely triggering for me, and sharing this publicly is actually the first time that I'm grieving since that experience. And so my heart goes out to all those who have been affected. And I'm sharing my story because I want to remind everyone that reproductive rights are more than just wanting children. It can very much be about life or death. I didn't cry.
Thank you for sharing your story. Like, you are very brave for sharing that. I know it was hard for you. And I just want to reiterate how messed up it is that, like, you have to share this story about what you've been through, and for a reason for us to have rights on our body. And, like, it shouldn't come down to life or death. It should come down to, it's my body, and, you know, this is what's best for me. I think we talked before the show. Obviously, I have a son. I got pregnant when I was 20. I was in college. Being pregnant was some of the most depressing months of my life, but I made my own choice on what, you know, I thought was best for me. I was, you know, unsupported by my child's father, which is fine. You know, like, everything is, of course, wonderful now. But my point is that you don't know until you're there. You have no idea. You don't know. You don't know what it's like. And we see the religion argument time and time again, and this is what we were talking about before the show. You have the right to your religion, you have the right to your beliefs, but you don't have the right to tell me or another woman, or man for that matter, what their religion should be or what they believe. Because, you know, we support you in your religious efforts and what you want, and we will fight for you to choose, you know, what's best for you in your life, because we want the right to do the same. And I think it's devastating. It's devastating to be back on camera talking about social issues instead of talking about soccer, because we would love to not have to care about these things, but they affect us, and they affect every one of us, and everyone needs to speak up. And I think, you know, something else that makes it really devastating is this is days after the Supreme Court said, you know, they can't make laws about guns, but they can make laws about a woman's body. So it's a heavy time, I think, for all of us.
It's incredibly difficult, and I just want to once again thank you, Meg, for sharing your story, because I think there are so many women who go through things like you've spoken about, and it's very stigmatized, and together we need to support each other more. And I think, to Sarah's point also, we never know what we're going to do in those situations. So to have somebody make such a ruling that dramatically impacts the lives of so many people on such a wide scale without really understanding how detrimental the effects are for everyone is absurd. It's frustrating, it's aggravating. I think we've all joked about flipping this table, but, you know, it's a very real feeling that, you know, we're angry.
We might flip the table.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Megan, like, thank you so much for sharing your story. And then Sarah, she's always so open about sharing things that are going on in her life and making things very real and bringing things to the table, more than just soccer and, like, what she does on the pitch. And I just think more true stories need to be out there, because from my perspective, making such big decisions like this about people's bodies in a way where it's almost like it's so sterile, it takes away from the reality of the situation. When more women need to tell their stories, I know it's difficult, but to make it just about, like, oh, well, you need to either have this baby or not, it's so much bigger than that. And that's what your story is all about. And many other stories, there's a spectrum of reasons why people make the choices that they make. And for them to make it about, which I just feel like I don't, to make it like this and make such a big decision without considering the spectrum of results from this action, for me, is just, it's heartbreaking. And so, yeah, I thank you guys for sharing your story. I know it's so difficult, but I think more people need to come out, because it's not just about, you know, having the baby or not. It's so much deeper than that. It's not about making a bad decision and not wanting to live up to it or whatever, because I hear such nasty things about why people feel like people get abortions, and it's just not, it's not that. It's so much deeper than that. There's so many different reasons, and it just feels like they've whittled it down to something very
Black and white.
wrong, binary. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like to kind of like relate this back to soccer and being an athlete, you know, like a few weeks ago when we were talking about gun violence and what happened in Uvalde, Texas, I feel like maybe people are wondering, why are we talking about this on this show? And we have to. We don't have a choice, because as athletes, as analysts and broadcasters, like, this is something that affects us. And I would also just like to say, obviously, as a member of the NWSL and of Angel City, I have a lot of friends throughout the league. I talk to a lot of the other women in the league, and some of us are really exhausted of carrying this weight on our shoulders, of constantly using our platform to talk about these things, because it constantly affects us, whether it's a race issue, whether it's gun violence, whether it's, you know, Roe v. Wade, whatever it is. And it's exhausting, and we feel like we have to do it because we want to see changes, and, you know, we want equality and we want these things. So it is so important, of course, like I said last time, for all athletes to be using their platforms. And all viewers and fans too. Like, we hear you and we see you guys, and your support means the world to us. So we're trying to use our platform in the best way possible to make change, and, you know, and that's why we're here talking about this.
Yeah, and I can't see the comment anymore, but somebody was saying it's more. Mears said it's more than just about women. It's about trans women, non-binary folks as well. But also, I think, again, this goes back to, you know, this being an everybody issue, and often these situations are, you know, monitored and the rules are made by men, but they're women's issues, but they're actually everybody's issue. And I feel like, you know, Sarah was talking about this earlier, that it can't just be, you know, the NWSL and WNBA and these types of, you know, just women's organizations coming out and talking. We need to see the likes of like LeBron James, Steph Curry. We need to see big male figures out there talking about these things as well, because these are it's going to affect their sisters. It's going to affect their, you know, their cousins, you know. Everybody has a woman that they can look at and say that this is probably going to affect you. So it can't just be women. It's everybody. This is a world issue, not just a women's issue.
Yeah, and how long will it take? How many people need to realize, oh, the person sitting next to me has actually gone through this, before we can get it through our heads and pass things that are going to protect women and that aren't going to take away our rights. You know, on a happy note, I do like the fact that we've seen some companies step up in a real way and offer services where they're going to actually provide financial assistance to women who need to now go out of state, take PTO, travel to another state in order to have these medical procedures done. So at least we have that. But I mean, God, if that's the like happy news, you know, we're having a few companies react positively.
Right.
Like, what are we doing?
And we're here promoting women's sports, you know, being athletes. We're constantly championing women, and like, for this kind of stuff to happen, like, it just brings us down. Like, how often can you stand up and be like, go women, like, go, break barriers, do this, and then we see politics regressing and going, things that shouldn't be political, and we're going backwards. It's exhausting.
Yeah, well, you know, to close the show, I just want to say thank you for always using your platform to speak out on these issues, because it really does make a difference. And it's made it a lot easier for me. Like, your vulnerability for the Uvalde shooting made it so much easier for me to come on here and share. And I just want to thank all of you for making it such a safe space to share a difficult story. And some may wonder why, but like what we were talking about, I'm fortunate to have somewhat of a platform to speak on it, to sort of help normalize that it happens to way more people than you realize, and it's way more nuanced than anyone realizes. And so thank you all for listening and for your support. Like, I'm just really overwhelmed by the love, and thank you for all of you for just being such great friends. But that is the show, so we'll see you next week. Because of the holiday, we aren't here on Monday, so we will see you on Wednesday. Thank you, everyone.